Hi guys! Today we are going to factor quadratic trinomials. So first of all, what the heck is a quadratic trinomial? That sounds complicated. It's really not. So quadratic just means that you have the highest power is x squared. So you're going to have an x squared somewhere inside of the problem. And a trinomial means that there are three terms in the polynomial. So first of all, a few things I want to clear up before we get started. Our answers are going to end up as two sets of parentheses. It doesn't matter which order you have your sets of parentheses in, as long as we have the same sets, we're totally fine. Okay, so if you have it in a different order, it doesn't matter. Another thing I want to point out to you is A, B, and C. A, B, and C are the coefficients for your terms in your trinomial. So A, B, and C, since they're coefficients, they're numbers. We do not include the x squared or the x with them, okay? Now, in your notes in this next part, it has a big list of exactly what to do with all of the steps on it. I'm not going to go through and read that to you. I think it's going to be more helpful for you to have that in front of you for when you need to practice on your own. And then for you and I can talk ourselves through the process. So here we go. Let's look at an example. So we have x squared minus 11x plus 24. So the first thing we want to do is we want to multiply a times c. So what is a? The number in front of my x squared. There's no number there, so there's actually a 1, right? So I'm going to go through and multiply a times c. I like to make a little rainbow over my trinomial. So 1 times 24. And 1 times 24 is 24. And then in my next box, I want to put the b value. The b value is the number on your x right here in the middle. So that'll be negative 11. Make sure to keep your sign with it too. Okay, now what I would like to do is to go through and do this on every single problem. Let's go through and multiply a times c and find b on each problem. All right, so on this next one, I don't have a number in front of x squared, so that must be 1. Then we'll multiply a times c, make a rainbow. So 1 times negative 63 is negative 63. My b value is the number on the x, so that's negative 2. On the next one, what's my number in front of x squared if there's nothing there? That's a 1. Then we have to multiply a times c, so we have to make a rainbow. So 1 times negative 18 is negative 18. And then we need to find our b value. Our b value is our number on our x, so that's positive 7. On the last one, here we go. 1 goes in front of the x squared. Multiply a times c. 1 times 30 is 30. B value is your guy on the x, so that's 13. All right, so that's the first step to factoring. Multiplying a times c, recognizing what that number is, and what b is. So what do we have to do with these two numbers? What we want to do is we want to find two numbers that multiply to a times c and add to b. So first of all, I know I'm multiplying to a positive number, but adding to a negative number. How does this happen? Only if both of those numbers are negative. So I know that any of the two numbers that I multiply together need to be negative. So in our last video, we went through and made factors of each term, right? Now we're going to go through and write factors of each of my a times c's. So my factors of 24, and I know they both need to be negative. So I'll have negative 1, negative 24, negative 2, negative 12, negative 3, negative 8, negative 4, negative 6. So now we have to figure out which one of these adds to negative 11. So we're going to go through and take each of these pairs over here in my left column and add them together in my right column. Negative 1 plus negative 24 is negative 25. Negative 2 plus negative 12 is negative 14. Negative 3 plus negative 8 is negative 11. Negative 4 plus negative 6 is negative 10. So, which of these matches my b value? Well, my b value is negative 11, and right here, I have that pair. Now let's do this for every other set. So, over here, I want to find two numbers that will multiply to negative 63 and add to negative 2. So if I'm multiplying to negative 63, one of the numbers has to be negative, one of the numbers has to be positive. So we're going to have two pairs of every set of factors. So negative 1 and 63, positive 1 and negative 63. Negative 3 and 21, positive 3 and negative 21. Negative 7 and 9, positive 9 and negative 7. All right. Now we want to figure out which one of these adds to negative 2. So we're going to go through and take all of the pairs on the left and add them together and put them together on the right. All right, here we go. Negative 1 plus 63 is positive 62. 1 plus negative 63 is negative 62. Negative 3 plus 21 is positive 18. 3 plus negative 21 is negative 18. Negative 7 plus 9 is positive 2. 9 plus negative 7 is negative 2. So, which of those matches my b value of negative 2? This last pair down here at the bottom. All right, on the next one, we want to find two numbers that multiply to negative 18 and add to 7. So, multiplies to negative 18. That means that one number has to be positive and one number has to be negative. I'm so sorry, there's somebody mowing their lawn outside, and have to make the video right now, so sorry if it's annoying, my bad. Things that multiply to negative 18, one of them has to be negative, one of them has to be positive. So we'll have negative 1 and positive 18, and positive 1 and negative 18. Negative 2 and positive 9, positive 2 and negative 9. Negative 3 and positive 6, positive 3 and negative 6. And now we want to go ahead and add all of my numbers over here in the left on the right. So, negative 1 plus 18 is 17. 1 plus negative 18 is negative 17. Negative 2 plus 9 is 7. 2 plus negative 9 is negative 7. Negative 3 plus 6 is 3. 3 plus negative 6 is negative 3. So which of those adds to my b value of positive 7? It's going to be negative 2 and positive 9. Now on this next one, we want to find two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 13. So what are my factors of 30? Let's see, we have 1 and 30. Oh, by the way, I know both these are going to be positive because we're multiplying to a positive number and adding to a positive number. So I'm looking at just the positive values right now. So we have 1 times 30. Keep up. 2 times 15. 3 times 10. 5 times 6. So then we'll add those guys together in the left into the right column. So 1 plus 30 is 31. 2 plus 15 is 17. 3 plus 10 is 13. 5 plus 6 is 11. So which of these pairs adds to 13? That would be 3 and 10. Now, if you can do all of that in your head and you don't need to make the lists, don't make the list. I don't really care. However, if you have trouble finding out what these numbers are, here's a really easy, quick way to go through and figure out what the correct factors are. Now, before we go on and we actually go through and start factoring, I want to tell you what exactly is happening here. Let's say that we had x plus 2 times x plus 3. If you wanted to multiply those together, you would take x times x and get x squared, x times 3, and get 3x. So really what just happened is you took x times x plus 3, right? Cool. The next thing you would do is you would have taken 2 times x and 3. So you would have had 2x plus 6 because you took 2 times x plus 3. And then what did you do to those two things in the middle? You added them. Then the last thing that you needed to do was to combine these two terms in the middle to get x squared plus 5x plus 6, right? So factoring, we're starting with this and going back to this. So what we're doing right now by finding two numbers that multiply to a times c and add to b, the reason it needs to add to that middle term is because here in a minute we're going to split that middle term up into those two numbers that we just found, because that's what they were before we combined them together, okay? So before we combine them together, so we need to split them apart now, okay? So, oops, wrong direction. So now in each of these, I'm going to go through and split my middle term. So I'm going to split that negative 11x into negative 3x and negative 8x. So I still have my x squared out in front. And then like we said, we have a negative 3x and a negative 8x. And then I still have my plus 24 there on the back. Okay? Now, negative 3x, negative 8x. It doesn't matter which order you put that in there. As long as you do everything correctly, you're going to get the same answer as me. Okay? So, order right now doesn't matter very much. Okay, let's go through and split all of our middle terms. So, over here, I'm going to split negative 2x into 9x and negative 7x. So, I'll keep my x squared. Split it into 9x and negative 7x. And I still have my negative 63. Split my 7x into negative 2x and positive 9x. And I still have my x squared and my negative 18 on each side. On my last one, I have x squared. And I'll split my 13x into 3x and 10x. Good deal. Now we want to do something called factoring by grouping. So, oopsies, wrong direction again. Gosh darn it, Mrs. Davis. So, after we factor by grouping, we're going to end up with something that looks like this because we are undistributing. We're factoring that guy out, right? So we are going to look at our first two terms because remember those first two terms when we multiplied out, that came from x multiplying by my second binomial, right? So we're going to take our greatest common factor of our first two terms. The greatest common factor of x squared and 3x is x. So when I divide an x out of both of those terms, I end up with an x minus 3. I'm then going to do the same thing to the second two terms. What do 8x and 24 have in common? Their greatest common factor is 8. However, if you remember, we needed to multiply by the same binomial, right? So I need to make sure that when I divide this greatest common factor out, I end up with positive x minus 3. Well, if I divide negative 8x by negative 8, that's how I'll end up with a positive x there, right? So I know this x, or that 8 needs to be negative. So negative 8x divided by negative 8 is x. 24 divided by negative 8 is negative 3. So what do this blue term and green term have in common? They have that x minus 3 in common. Once we factor out that x minus 3, the only thing we were left over on the inside there is x and negative 8. So the other set of parentheses is x minus 8. Cool. Let's look at and we're all done now. Let's look at the next one. My greatest common factor of my first two terms. The greatest common factor of x squared and 9x is x. Divide out that x, so x squared divided by x is x. 9x divided by x is 9. What's the greatest common factor of negative 7x and negative 63? The greatest common factor is 7, but I need to make sure that my sets of parentheses match. So I need to factor out a negative 7. So that way when I take negative 7x divided by negative 7, I end up with positive x. And when I take negative 63 divided by negative 7, I end up with positive 9. So that way I can factor out those two sets of parentheses that are always the same. And the other set of parentheses is my stuff left over, x minus 7. All right, let's knock out these last two. My greatest common factor of my first two terms, x squared and negative 2x, is x. X squared divided by x is x, minus 2x divided by x is 2. My greatest common factor of 9x and negative 18 is 9. I'll have plus 9 here. 9x divided by 9 is x. Minus 18 divided by 9 is 2. So I'll take out the term they have in common, x minus 2. And then my other set of parentheses is the stuff left over, x plus 9. Take my greatest common factor of the first two terms, x squared and 3x. That's x. X squared divided by x is x, plus 3x divided by x is 3. The greatest common factor of 10x and 30 is 10. 10x divided by 10 is x plus 30 divided by 10 is 3. So then I'll take out what those two terms have in common, the x plus 3. And my other set of parentheses is the stuff left over, x plus 10. Awesome! Tomorrow we are going to do more of this, but next time, A will not be 1. So stay tuned. See you later.